Thank you so much, Governor, for joining us today. Of course, we had perhaps expected this decision. We saw what took place in South Africa, but really, if you could just start off by running us through the rationale for choosing to cut rates by 50 basis points.
Thank you, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. The background is really our assessment of the international global economy, which seemed to be weakening, and that has also started to affect the Namibian economy. As you know, Namibia is a very small open economy, and therefore what is happening in the international global economy has a great impact on domestic activities, and we have started to see that already happening. Now, looking at the domestic situation, as I said, economic activity seem to show some sign of cooling down, and we thought with that environment we may need to do something to support economic activity. That's why we reduce the rate.
When it comes to credit demand, I mean, that has remained buoyant. If you just firstly look at broad money supply, annual growth of 14.8% at the end of June, it ticked up from 12.7% overall. How would you describe the state of consumers right now and the health of consumers and the type of demand that you're looking at going forward?
Yes, you're right. When you look at private sector credit, we haven't really seen much change. We have seen a small decline in the month of June, but on overall credit still remain buoyant. It still remain in the region of 12%, which is quite strong, even in real terms, considering the fact that our inflation is just half of that. So in real terms, you're actually having credit growing in the region of 6%, 7%. Things have not changed dramatically, and therefore there's no need to be concerned. What is concerning to us is the fact that there are certain categories of credit that have been growing very fast, specifically installment credit, which is money or credit going to finance the purchase of motor vehicles, which we think it's something that we need to continue watching, and if needs be, as a country, we may need to consider taking action, and that's because mainly because you'll want to see credit going into productive assets, and we don't think that, especially things like passenger vehicles, which have been growing very fast, are things that you want to spend money on because they may not improve the productive capacity of the economy.
In terms of action, would you be saying more regulation for the banking sector to entice more prudent lending activities?
I think at the moment we have an open mind about it. We have not really decided as to what best for Namibia, and therefore it may not only be an issue for the central bank. I think we may have to look elsewhere to see what will be the appropriate intervention, which may directly affect credit going to the purchase of motor vehicles.
Of course, it certainly is something that you have highlighted as a concern. When we talk about the inflation outlook and the outlook for monetary policy going forward, of course, we saw in South Africa inflation coming far below expectations, below 5% in fact. You've got inflation sitting at 6%. It ticked up from 5.6%. So what is your view on the outlook for inflation right now, and are we going to see further rate cuts?
Our view is that inflation will probably still remain benign for the foreseeable future. We think that the pressure is upward because of what's happening in the food prices. If you look at food prices and energy prices, there seem to be some pressure there. There is drought in the U.S., which is causing some supply constraints, especially when it comes to maize or corn. We also have seen a small uptick in energy prices, particularly fuel, and we think that they will continue to exert some pressure on inflation. But we don't think it's going to be that of a concern. We don't think it's going to be in the double-digit levels. We think inflation will still remain within single-digit levels, which would not be a cause for concern for us.
So what is the likelihood of another rate cut at your next meeting?
I think it will be very difficult to speculate. I wish I knew. What is important is to understand that every time the monetary policy meets, it will have to consider all the facts on the ground. It will have to look at the global economic activities as well as domestic economic activity before a decision is taken. So at the moment, it will be very difficult to say whether there will be a rate cut or whether we're going to remain at the same level.
Certainly a very uncertain environment that we're having to deal with right now. That was the governor of the Bank of Namibia, Ipumbu Shiimi.